thing. It was totally part of the brand. Choosing a serif typeface instead of a font that looks like a robot was such a revolutionary thing and was part of the spirit of the brand. The computer helps you to do your daily task in a fun and human way. We're not here to help you to put numbers and make calculations. We are helping you to be creative. What's more creative than a typeface that doesn't look made by a robot? A serif typeface. All the communication was made with this font. That font is connected to the brand. They had such a clear vision. A font like that made total sense.
We're seeing quite crazy fonts sort of coming out. But it's interesting to me because I think some people don't know how to approach this. So if someone was approaching this they're building a brand and they're trying to find this signature for their company, what are the things you think they should be looking for?
I would, first of all, make sure that the font that is chosen following the brand strategy of that company that you're working for. So making sure that the font is part of the whole brand organism. If your brand is a brand that it's about, it's a funeral home, and it's a funeral home that is about talking about death in a positive way, you need to make sure that you have a typeface that it's used by the brand in a way that the font is perfectly connected to the message that this brand needs to do. So making sure that is memorable. My belief is that brand typeface needs to feel like the voice of a person. Whenever you're in the middle of the street and you hear this voice, maybe you cannot hear what this person is saying because this person is behind you, but you can recognize that person because just from the sound of the voice. And this is a very important thing because a brand is an organism. It's an organism that is composed by hundreds of elements. And logos, copywriting, photography, colors, and of course, typography. And talking to your audience, it doesn't need to be a copy line. It could just be the type inside a button. So that element of recognition is very important. Making sure that the font is part of your strategy of telling the story is key. I cannot fucking stand companies that are using Helvetica or Futura or generic fonts in their branding because they're spending certain, even big companies, they spend millions of dollars in their fucking brand. And why can't they spend a little bit more money to make sure that they have a font that is recognizable? It would save them millions just to have a font that is recognizable because they don't even have to say anything. They just have to put type on a page and people would immediately recognize the brand without, even before the brand start saying anything with their copy. The perfect example, and actually that was one of the, going back to your original question, your first question, the reason why I feel that type is such an important part of branding is because, of course, when I bought my first computer, it was an Apple computer. And at the time, they were using ITC Garamond, which is a version that was customized for Apple, and it was kind of condensed. It was a cool font at the time, a shitty font after a few years, that now is ridiculed by everyone. But unfortunately, I'm so old that I'm sure that in 3 years it's going to be cool again. But anyway, looking at this font from Apple, it was amazing how they were good at communicating the brand. White background, photograph of a computer or just one object on a white background, and this condensed typeface, serif typeface that has nothing to do with a computer. That's the other thing. It was totally part of the brand. Choosing a serif typeface instead of a font that looks like a robot from the future was such a revolutionary thing and was part of the spirit of the brand. We are here to challenge the idea of a computer as a machine. The computer helps you to do your daily task in a fun and human way. We are not here to help you to put numbers and make calculations. We are helping you to be creative. And what's more creative than a typeface that doesn't look made by a robot? A serif typeface. And all the communication was made with this font, which again, now go back to the linking back to your last question. That font is connected to the brand. The brand was so, they had such a clear vision that choosing a font like that made total sense. They're doing computers and they're called Apple, which has nothing to do with computers. They're not called micro something or techno something else. They're called Apple. They're not called something that says anything about circuits. And then they decide to make to choose a font that it's in total resonance with the font, with the brand.
It's what I'm hearing you say is that the typeface becomes like the voice of the brand, which makes sense that you can hear a friend of yours in the background and know they're there and know who it is. Or if you hear Brad Pitt, you know it's Brad Pitt because you've kind of heard his voice. And I think it is, you get that visual sense when you move past something. You've got color, you've got icons, you've got visuals, but you can also kind of really own a specific voice, your own tone of voice. And I like I like the example where you're saying that the kind of the choice of that voice can also speak volumes about the strategy of the business, about the positioning of the business, about what you stand for, what you kind of hear in the world to do, which I think is very exciting. It seems like there's this explosion of typography, and there's a lot of really great type foundries making really beautiful work. And I mean, I think one of the things that I can say is that if you are going down this route of building a brand, you can acquire typefaces for not a lot of money. For a few $100s, you can purchase something beautiful. You don't have to design it yourself. Like, what do you think has led to this proliferation of typography, in around the world?
The offer was not as big as right now.
Hmm.
So, in a certain way, I preach that everyone should have their own custom typeface because you don't want to have the voice of Brad Pitt. You want to have your own voice. I mean, I would like to have his physique and his money. Definitely not his love life issues. But I think nowadays there's so many typefaces and the quality is pretty high that, of course, if you don't have a budget, you can choose a typeface and make that typeface be the voice of your brand. But again, you're still borrowing something that then I can borrow, and your company and my company will have the same voice, the same sound. Of course, I will speak slightly different from you, and I will be more colorful, and maybe I will use a different kind of photography. So nowadays, I think people can, if they're smart, they can choose font wisely if they fit with their brand strategy. Again, very important. Though it's always better to have a font that you can own and use for your brand in a way that is really indistinguishable. And I hope in a world where all the CEOs will understand the importance of this little thing, that it's actually another important thing that I want to add is not only for their customers, it's also internally, because you use this typography also for your own internal communication. And it's a way to really unify the brand inside and communicate the brand clearly outside. So when you work across, the wall of we versus them, this is a really great way to use your power of communication internally and externally.
The thing that I'm taking away that I really love is having your own voice. And I think that is such a important thing in a time like this, where there's sort of more access and better tools, and all these things are amazing, but what it means is that there's so many more other people out there trying the same thing, trying to steal that same piece. And I think a gap that you've identified in my head for me is that having your own distinct voice is something that can sort of visually differentiate you. And if you can visually differentiate yourself, then ultimately you can get people, you can steal a little bit of that attention span, which will ultimately allow you to build your brand, to get your message out there, to speak to people. Hello YouTube, I'm Ross Drakes. I'm the founder of Nicework, and thank you so much for your time at watching this video. If you're seeing me, it means you made it all the way to the end, so we've at least done something right. If you enjoyed this, we'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And I think more important than that is if you know someone who might need to hear this, if you think someone out there who needs this message in their life, please spread the link, because it makes a huge difference to the world, and it allows us to fulfill our message of making sure that there are no more bad brands in the world. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next video.